within 48 hours, you're going to have a dream.
Welcome to the Blue Door Playbook, a podcast for the soul, featuring the work and wisdom of archetypal psychotherapist Timothy Tate. I'm your host, Putter Brown. Episode 8, Negotiation. I loved bumping into you on Main Street a few weeks ago.
Yes.
In the rain, under the marquee of the Rialto Theater.
Right.
And getting to spend an hour together, an unplanned hour together.
Yes, that was beautiful.
That was beautiful. And at some point, I bounced a couple podcast ideas off you. And what came back to me, you said at the forefront of your psychotherapy practice right now is negotiation. And I wanted to lead with that and ask you, what did you mean?
Yeah.
That it's at the front of your 40 years in private psychotherapy practice in our town, Bozeman, Montana.
Yeah, no, that kind of just popped up. I certainly wasn't thinking about that, but, in the alchemy of our relationship and of that scene and being on Main Street and the power and load of that event, honoring a significant person in town who, renovated the Rialto, the very place we were in, and hence why we were there.
Yeah.
And the tragedy of that suicide, which is its own storyline that we don't have to go to, but that's what brought us together in that rain under that canopy at the Rialto.
Yeah.
And I did actually finally have a chance to talk with his partner, not his wife, but his business partner. He came into through the Blue Door the other day, and so that was a good full circle on that story.
Yeah.
And that story does have to do with negotiations because of what, for instance, a man goes through to negotiate taking his own life. And the kind of inner dialogue that we have, I think, going automatically, if not unconsciously, about how we negotiate with each other, with ourselves, and with the world. So I think those are three different domains of negotiation: with ourselves, with the other, and with the world. And by negotiations, I think I mean, and maybe you'll pull something out of this for me to focus on, but what I believe I'm talking about is the way in which we have to find our way in this world, given the circumstances we're in, which for a community like Bozeman, that's very active and youth-driven, no small task. How to negotiate our way in this town at this time with this world.
I remember when you said the word negotiation as a podcast theme, you followed that by saying negotiating this reality.
Yes.
And that's what you meant. Bozeman right now.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And the way in which the pressures on our citizens as a sample of our society, which is a sample of the world, the challenge for conscious individuals, or those of us who are endeavoring to be conscious, is to find a meaningful way through the circumstances of the impinging pressures, which to me is a negotiation. And it starts with the negotiation of ourselves with ourselves, which is always so weird. in that we have a private reality spinning all the time. And then we have as we've talked about, I believe in one of the podcasts, a presentation to the world, our persona, and then we have the harsh reality of literal reality that is non-negotiable.
And when you brought up the word negotiation, reminded me of a time behind the blue door when you and I would sneak meetings between sessions and just get 5 minutes together to cover something or deliver something or talk about something. And one day I walked in and you said, "Get in here." Your energy was, "Get in here." And you sat down on your chair and I sat down on the couch, and you had Carl Jung's Red Book in your life for a couple of months at that point.
Thanks to you.
Thanks to me. Yeah, got that in your hands. Had to do that. And that book inspired you to revisit his alchemical studies. And in the alchemical studies book, you had found the spirit in the bottle. And your moment was eureka. I have found treasure. And you couldn't wait to get it out and tell me, "Oh my God." Those were your words.
Yeah.
And it was
pretty worked up.
Yeah, and it was beautiful because you had found something that I felt, connected to your work. This is what I'm doing.
Yes.
This is what I do behind the blue door. And also connected to your mentor, Hillman and Jung.
What a great memory.
And the negotiation piece.
Okay.
So there's a myth about negotiation.
Yes. Yeah. I think that negotiation in therapeutic terms means some form of deliberate, intentional negotiation with how we imagine ourselves in the world and how we make peace with the story going on inside our psyche. And so that term negotiation, which sadly in our society right now has a whole load on it about deal making and negotiation with the intention of winning. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about negotiation as a sophisticated psychological maneuver to harness both that spirit in the bottle, our intensity within ourselves, the circumstances of where we are in that particular moment, whether it be in a relationship with our woman or man or wife or husband or partner or children. If we want to talk about negotiation.
Oh, yeah.
Constant negotiation. And what I'm getting at here is that there's a core within us that won't stand for being violated by all the distractions of the modern world. And so negotiating is really with ourself. And that's what's interesting to me as a psychotherapist, and probably why that came up in our conversation. Because I think in each of the sessions I hold, at some point we're talking about negotiating with your sense, with the individual who I'm serving, sense of what he's obligated to do and what his desire or her desire is, which might not match the obligations.
And in a session behind the blue door, the person comes presenting the current problem or the current challenge. Do you see that challenge? Then suddenly the negotiation piece comes into play, or at some point the negotiation piece comes into play. Do all the challenges that people bring represent spirit? Or are they all sort of coming from the same place, that bottle?
Mm-hmm. You know, I think in some way we can make that case. What comes to mind is the negotiation of how simply to get to the blue door. Then you knock or simply open it. But then you cross that threshold into that sacred space of my office, and we close that door and we lock it, and the person sits down across from me and let the negotiations begin. For instance, like you were suggesting, people come with presenting challenges, which are somewhat of interest to me, not that much, but I don't mean to be dismissive, but again, the presenting circumstances. I'm not interested in symptoms. I'm interested in the deeper story, as we've talked about. Mm-hmm. And that is unusual because I think people have a pre-set idea of what counseling or therapy is, and that is to talk about your troubles. Sure. Mm-hmm. I'm down with that idea. And that's just how we start. So this last week, I had this young athlete who is a mountain climber and ski patroller, and somewhere in the mid-20s. And this is a critical time for young men, is the mid to late 20s. Mm-hmm. And so he has so much energy and so much gusto and clarity about what he's going to be doing. As a ski patroller coming up, that season starts here in 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. They're training and all that, you know. So his enthusiasm for the work that he does is invigorating because, as you might understand, seasonal workers, patroller, have then another season of work to do in the summer. Mm-hmm. And his was trail crew. Mm-hmm. And in Yellowstone Park and clearing trails and making new trails, which is fascinating as a archetype, mm-hmm. building a trail in the wilderness. Yeah, I could go off there. Yeah. But so he was negotiating with himself what his responsibilities were, and he would prefer not to have any responsibilities. He'd prefer just to do his job and be a ski patroller. But then the rest of the story started to come out. His family system, his own fears, and that's where some form of negotiation continues to deepen until we are negotiating between two men, eye to eye, sincerely and honestly about what is on his heart and mind and soul. And that's when the work, blasts off. Yeah. That's where people in my practice would say, I'd say, well, we just got 5 minutes left. And they go, what? Yeah. The time goes out the window because meaning is our compass, not the clock. So when a person does come through the blue door and sit down and talk with me, they're ready. They're primed. It's atypical of what I understand counseling to be, where it's more of a conversation. Although this is a communication, mm-hmm. We're not negotiating how to manage symptoms. We're negotiating whether or not you want to live, and in what way do you want to live, and is it meaningful? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if I circle back to that myth, the spirit in the bottle, mm-hmm. when the spirit comes out of the bottle, it's huge. And the problems, the troubles that people are bringing to you are huge. And it takes negotiation by a naive boy or a more innocent place, but still clever, to tuck that giant spirit back into the bottle. And is that a common theme? When I come to the Blue Door, my own story was completely naive. I don't think I had ever read anything about mythology or had ever been in counseling before.
Right.
I remember crossing that threshold because you looked right at me and you went, scary. And I was afraid. I didn't know exactly what I was getting into. So I was naive.
Yes.
But in kind of an innocent, beautiful way.
Yes. Called the Eternal Boy.
The Eternal Boy. Yeah.
The Puer Eternus.
Yeah.
Eternal Boy.
So.
And such was the case with this young man who was in my practice. He was a poster child for the Eternal Boy. Naive, enthusiastic, confused, but felt like something was happening in his psyche that he didn't understand at all. And that's where it gets interesting, where the naive male encounters his task of the next stage of life, which is to appreciate and again negotiate between the idea of what he thought he was or what society demanded of a young man and what the reality, quote unquote, the literal reality is. How are you going to make money? Where are you going to live? Are you going to be able to afford a car? All those hardcore questions that can get lost in the ruckus of our own worry.
And was that his first session? Yeah.
Yep. He decided to come back.
Yeah.
Which was very good.
Smart man.
Smart man.
Clever.
Yep. Well, maybe.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, well, we have to be careful of clever.
I was just kind of remembering the boy in the myth. It seemed like he had to be clever.
Yes. That's right. Creative, clever.
Yeah, creative.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think that is true. Yeah, in that sense, when we think of clever, of how to negotiate something in a way that might be unusual, not normal. Just and so that creative piece is huge for me in people's lives.
I remember when you lectured about that myth. You said something really touched you about the beginning of that negotiation. And the first thing that the boy says to the spirit is, slowly here.
Yeah, that's right.
And it seems like you bring that counsel to a naive boy.
Yeah. Well, certainly the manic state of mind is kind of the norm in young men, but I think I make a gross generalization that manic energy is running the collective. And at the same time, what we're getting at here, if we're talking about negotiation, is how does, let's stick with the young man, negotiate his reality with the demands of society and not feel less than. And when we started, we were talking about the memorial service for this gentleman who took his own life. Imagine that negotiation.
It seems that it's a couple things pop in my mind there. Sadness and shame. There's a couple things that just trying to like figure out how someone so talented and so creative and just an awesome human, funny, probably the best dresser in the whole town.
Wait a minute.
I know. Every time you saw him, you saw some, outward, wonderfully put together outfit that was so unique,
Yeah, you knew him well.
Yeah. I don't think I ever saw him wear the same shirt twice. But the sadness piece for sure. And
that's a little too mild.
That's a little too mild. Yeah.
Despair.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, help me understand that. Despair.
Well, there's a spectrum in all things, really, when it comes to our inner world. You had framed it one way with one word, and I said no. It was despair. You could have said, like sad. He was sad.
Yeah.
Which is awful to feel sad. Then we might say, kind of low-grade chronic depression. Certainly a phenomena. The dual head of anxiety and depression is the most seen combination in my practice, is that combination, anxiety and depression. And this gentleman had both of those running really hard. But so the despair, led him to that situation. And he was very deliberate in that despair, which is interesting as well. Depression and despair actually do really focus you on something. It could be really wickedly off, and it could be an isolated experience from everybody else, but it's very focused. You go through letting people where you are, and you ping them before you commit the act. That's pretty focused. Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand in despair, is there any chance of getting it back in the bottle? Is there any negotiation there?
Yeah, well, I think that is the purpose of psychotherapy, is to be able to initiate in a creative way a dialogue with the presenting symptom, which we're talking as despair right now, rather than have it be a monologue of that despair screaming at you from your psyche. What is the conversation with despair? Can you draw it? Can you write me a poem? Can you express it? When I give you your task of reading something on this regard, will you come back to the practice with it underlined and notes taken in your journal? Are we going to do this? Because I have a bunch of requirements for you. We're not just going to wallow in despair and say, oh, God, that's awful.
Yeah.
Which it is. And I'm not callous.
Yeah. Yep.
Am I impatient? Yes, I am. I'm a hybrid of impatient and patience. I have patience, enduring patience for somebody who's doing the work. I have no patience who's somebody's pretending that they're doing the work. But again, I think when we talk about negotiation with self, with others, and with the world, part of my task in my psychotherapy practice is to help the individual expand into those other domains, not just about yourself, not just about your family or your mate, but, my drumbeat about community and our responsibility in community. And that's, what are you talking about? I want to talk about myself. Yeah. Right. Well, that's called narcissism, but okay. That's a good start. It's all about you. Yeah.
When you said negotiation to me on Main Street, got me to revisit the Spirit in the Bottle lecture.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that lecture was 10 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
And in that lecture, you spoke about being in private psychotherapy practice for 30 years.
Yes.
So now today is 40 years.
Right.
40 years of listening, helping people with their stories.
Yep. Yeah, I opened my practice in 1982 in Bozeman.
82.
So I guess 43, something like that. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
I've been married for 45.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's a feat in itself.
That is.
Yeah. Beautiful.
It is.
Beautiful. When I revisited the lecture, the Spirit in the Bottle lecture,
Yes.
you mentioned something towards the end about the move that is going from spirit to soul, somehow crafting or somehow making that move from spirit to soul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's an overarching challenge. And it harkens to the task of, let's stay with young men, high-spirited. Oh, my God, high-spirited. As I was talking earlier, the manic energy is what we use as a term for highly spirited. Mm-hmm. And thank God I've gone to enough rodeos where the high-spirited horse and rider go into this moment of 7 seconds of trying to stay in the saddle without getting bucked off. Mm-hmm. That's a soulful moment when the spirit is in charge and you negotiate that ride. And when you're done, there is this descent into, well, first of all, I did it and I'm still alive. But also, it's a descent because from spirit to soul is a descent. Spirit is out of the bottle, bringing it back in and containing it is the first move to soul. If we don't recognize that we're at the mercy of spirit and we don't have a way to contain it, then the challenge is to both understand that, first of all, what that even means, but then what is the container that is strong enough to hold the spirit and transform it into soul, which is simply another synonym for depth. Soul seems to be something deeper, something more abiding than simply spirit. And to make that conversion for young men in particular almost feels like a defeat because they want to be enthusiastic. They identify with being athletes and with mountain climbers and with conquering, which is spirit. But to come up against, which is normally the case, an injury, then you have to slow down, if not stop. And that's the portal to soulfulness, which is, in my book, where meaning lies. And that's not for the faint of heart. But it often is the move that's necessary. And so if I can facilitate through the way I roll, through the reading and the tasks and the journaling, that shift from being disturbed that you're not all spirited and manic, but now we have some new options here, new frontiers of exploring your soul, the soul, then that gets some traction. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Depth.
Yeah. The definition of soul is depth / meaning.
Yeah.
That hybrid.
Yeah. And you used those words a few times already.
Mm.
Depth and meaning. Yeah.
Kind of into that.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Nice. In a conventional therapeutic environment, they're going, how do they go at spirit?
Beats me.
Yeah. Just in talking,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And without tasks?
Nope.
Nope. Yeah.
I mean, spirit is much more popular than soul. Let's just get straight on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Soul means you've experienced a defeat. You're descending.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to do that. And yet everybody is on some point of that spectrum of high flying, the eternal boy, high flying, accident, injury, divorce, breakup, medical condition, interrupts that high flying. And that's typically when people come into the practice where something has happened that they can't negotiate around. It's non-negotiable because they have no clue of what they're up against now, because we haven't, unfortunately, taught our young about depth, just about being high-spirited and succeed. And did you make the soccer team? Yeah. You didn't? Oh, God damn it. You know, the sense of defeat if you're not highly spirited. And so there has to be some sort of life crisis that catches the individual's attention enough to realize that they're not holding all the cards and actually don't have any idea what's going on. And then soul has an opportunity to be explored. Depth and meaning start to come into play.
Getting back to this example of the young man.
Yes, sir.
How will you help him descend?
Well, I would ask, I'd like to understand what death means to you. Are you afraid of death? Are you running from death? I mean, it's a question we all have to come to terms with, I suppose, although when we die is totally arbitrary and nobody knows. But that fear might be the word that death is a symbol for, fear of disappearing, can only be accessed, in my experience, when all other methods of negotiating with life and death aren't working real well, when they've run out of juice. Although neurosis is such a powerful force, and I just went to how much my practice starts with how people are compensating to avoid the very subject we're talking about. And so compensation is such a heavy force, simply meaning rather than facing something, I'm compensating by doing something else. So rather than facing my mortality, I think I will get busier to make sure that I'm alive, which is oddly, paradoxically, one of the best ways to hurry up your death.
Get busy.
Yeah,
Compulsively. Yeah. I remember you once saying, you know your own ego's grip on you by your own fear of death. Like how much fear is more grip, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Controls all the rage. Controlling everything. The attempt to do so. Which is just so sad.
And that would be a compensation. Controlling.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I do just want to say thanks for sharing what you spoke out on Main Street in Bozeman in the rain under that marquee was negotiation, being at the forefront of your practice right now.
Yes.
And I just want to say thanks for this time that we could all learn a little bit about what that means and what that looks like.
Yes, of course, Putter. Thank you for asking me.
We've reached the end of another session in the Blue Door Playbook, a podcast for the soul, featuring archetypal psychotherapist Timothy Tate. Thanks for listening. I'm Putter Brown. Stay tuned for the next episode, where Timothy explores the world of archetypes. The content in this podcast is strictly for informational and entertainment purposes only. If you are experiencing mental health symptoms, please contact a mental health provider in your community.